to. So I would like the audience to meet Lorena Beltran. She's the CEO of CannabiSalud. She's in Mexico, and today she's going to be discussing the rise of Mexico. So
Correct.
I'm going to turn it over to you and Jill. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So I think I have this set where everybody can see the slide, and just can't remember where the
It's usually on the right corner, up or down, maybe. Let's see.
Where's present? So it's different from PowerPoint. I wouldn't have thought I would have issues with Gmail. Well, could we go off of slides this way?
Sure.
All right. Well, Lorena, why don't you start by filling us in on who you are and what your role is in the Mexican cannabis industry right now.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for the invitation. Yes, my involvement in the cannabis industry started back in 2014. I used to live in Colorado. My first job in the industry was with the company Charlotte's Web Hemp. And at the beginning of 2014, something very interesting happened. There was the release of a documentary. I think all of us know it, by Dr. Sanjay Gupta, where they show the story of Charlotte. So that's what got my attention and my interest in working for Charlotte's Web. So I started that journey. I think it was the best school I ever had. A company that's vertically integrated and which also has a nonprofit called the Realm of Caring, and learning everything from seed to final product to patients, doctors, and all the education around it. So after working with Charlotte's Web for a couple years, I just decided to continue moving in the direction, maybe, to go back to Mexico, always having that thought in the back of my mind. My heart is in Mexico. So I wanted to show Mexico what we could be able to do with the cannabis industry. So while working with Charlotte's Web, we had the visit of a Mexican family with a little girl. Her name is Grace. And they were asking help because they were going to start a legal process in order to get an import permit to get the product for Grace, a little girl with epilepsy. So I was able to be part of that process and help the family and start connecting myself with Mexico again. So I started as an external advisor of the Mexican Congress, also advising different legislators and educating around the cannabis industry. So I left Charlotte's Web, and then I continued my journey with other companies that were more involved in the recreational area. I just wanted to learn everything I could. And I was just traveling back and forth, Mexico City to Colorado. And in 2000, at the end of 2017, I decided to move back just because we already had the new law for medical use in place and published. And I also created CannabiSalud, the first international medical cannabis congress to take place in Mexico. So those were enough reasons to come back to Mexico and just continue my journey here as a speaker, educator with CannabiSalud, which has become a great educational platform, not only for health professionals, but also legislators, entrepreneurs, and consumers. So if you want to go to the next slide, the first 4 slides are just while I'm talking about me, what I did, during my first years in the industry. I'm a lobbyist. I'm a single mom. One of the first women entrepreneurs in Mexico in the cannabis industry. And the next one, please. And this is part of my mission, just create conscious and sustainable solutions for the improvement of public health, the environment, and the economy of Mexico through the cannabis plant and its multiple uses and properties. So I want to tell you how the first law was able to pass in Mexico in 2017, and where are we standing in terms of regulation right now. So next slide, please. I'm going to go through a timeline of uh, the main events that has happened in Mexico.
And it sounds like there was just some exciting news this past week that I want to ensure that we'll still have time to get through. So if we could keep our overview like supersonic, that'd be great.
Yes, no, definitely. I'm going to go real fast on this timeline so we can go to the interesting part. And there was a discussion yesterday, as you mentioned. So the first thing, in 2015, the Supreme Court of Justice grants the first protection permit, we call it amparo, for cultivation for personal consumption to a group of 4 adults. This case was called the SMART case. That was the beginning of the regulation here in Mexico. 2016, we have the first protection. The first protection is granted for the importation of cannabis products for medicinal use for Grace. And this is what I just mentioned about the little girl Grace, Charlotte's Web, and the whole legal process that they went through. They got the permit, they were able to start importing into Mexico legally. So that's when the medical cannabis activism really sparked. 2017, in June, the amendment to the General Health Law is approved, allowing the importation of cannabis derived products as well as the cultivation and processing for scientific research and drug development purposes. June of 2017. Once we have a law published, the authorities work on the regulation, and that they have to publish the regulation no later than 180 days after the law is published. Today, we don't have that regulation, and it's been over 3 years now for the medical law. 2018, October, COFEPRIS, which is like the Mexican FDA, issues internal guidelines, like a regulation per se, to carry out the medical use law published in June of 2017. So there was an intent to publish the regulation. So they did publish this regulation for only 3 months before the new president came in. And because it's a new president, a new party, everything changes, right? So we were able to have this regulation for only 3 months. And during those 3 months, only 14 companies were able to get import permits. The new government came in, they erased that regulation, and they said they were going to work on a new one. So at the same time, the same month, October of 2018, we have the Supreme Court of Justice grants the fifth protection for personal consumption. So if you see, in 2015, there were 4 cases. In 2018, we had another case. So when you have five cases in Supreme Court, that creates jurisprudence, meaning that they declare unconstitutional the absolute prohibition of personal consumption of cannabis, including cultivation, harvest, possession, and transportation. So right now, that's our right. As Mexicans, we can grow our own plants for personal consumption. And again, the next part is just the 14 companies that were granted the permits. Next one, please. So, then in 2019, in March, we have the new government coming in, right? So the new COFEPRIS commissioner revokes the guidelines published in October of 2018 on the medical law and submits the import permits of the 14 companies to review. Today, they have not yet been released, even though those 14 companies did everything under the law, under the regulation that was published back then. But still, the new government has been trying to revoke those permits. They can do that because it's against the law. So there's still this, fight in court to get those permits back. In the meantime, we have a new bill that it's presented, and promoted by the Secretary of Interior, Ms. Olga Sanchez Cordero, which proposes the international production and commercialization of cannabis for medical, recreational, and industrial purposes. So since 2019, Olga, when she proposed this bill, it was just so slow. And what happened yesterday is that the senators were finally able to discuss this new proposed bill that will open up the regulation for all uses of cannabis in Mexico. So that's where we at right now. If we go to the next slide, please. Okay, so yes, at the beginning of March in 2020, finally the proposed bill by Olga Sanchez Cordero stands for vote in the Senate, and it is generally approved. What does this mean? There's a process in Mexico in the Senate when you want to pass a law. First, the senators vote the law in general terms. The second voting, it's in detailed terms, right? In the particular terms. And then it goes to the Chamber of Deputies so they can talk about the taxes, everything that they're going to tax and the price of the licenses. So everything stopped because of the pandemic. So they were voting in March. We have pandemic. Nobody's working between April and October. Everything is uncertainty until yesterday, November 13th. The Senate commissions resume the discussion and the proposed bill is raised again and is generally approved. So yesterday, the discussion with the senators over this proposed bill to open up recreational industrial hemp and amplify the law that we already have for medical purposes was discussed and it was approved, which is great news for Mexico. Next step, they're going to vote this proposed bill in particular terms, in the details, in the reserves, and that's going to happen next week on Wednesday. So once they vote again in Wednesday and it passes, then it goes to the Chamber of Deputies, Cámara de Diputados. So the process, it's starting again, it's continuing, it's looking very positive. We don't know if the law will be published before the year ends, but we definitely know it's going to happen at the beginning of 2021. And I know you guys have heard so many things about Mexico, and every year it's different. The proposed bill suffers modifications every time they discuss it. So I don't want to go into details of what this proposed bill is going to let us do if it passes as a law, because it might change again in these next few days before Wednesday. But we can talk about just the general terms about this law, which is very interesting because it includes recreational, right? So let's go to the next slide real quick. Just an overview of what we have right now in place. We have a medical law that passed in 2017 that's still waiting for the regulation to be published. That should happen anytime soon as well. We already know what the regulation looks like, and that's coming as well. And then we have home cultivation that was legalized by the court order. And then we have the proposed bill that it's being discussed right now and that it will become a law at the beginning of next year. So next slide, please. So what are the principles of this new proposed bill that it's being discussed? First of all, there's a new entity that's going to be born, the Mexican Institute of Regulation and Cannabis Control. It will be in charge of the control and regulation of the acts immersed in the object of this law, established in all the articles in the corresponding regulation, official Mexican standards, and in the provisions applicable. Next one, please. In general terms, we have the personal use, and they're talking about 4 plants per person in flowering stage as a limit. Associations, meaning that an association can have from 2 to 20 members. This is a cultivation associations. So if I have the right to have my plants, but I don't know how to grow and I don't have time, I go to an association. They can grow the plants for me and give me my flowers every month, right? There's a prohibition of alcohol consumption in the facilities of the associations. They can only supply cannabis to their members, and there will be monetary sanctions if they do not comply with the regulation. On the commercial side, this law is focusing on the recreational market and industrial hemp, because we already have a law for medical use, right? So the commercial part includes planting, cultivation, harvesting, production, processing, and the sale of cannabis for commercial purposes. So yes, they're talking about having points of sale like dispensaries in Colorado and California, with the certain requirements around it, the distance from school, etc. All the things that we already know that have been established in other countries. And then we have the scientific purposes, which you only need an authorized research protocol in order to do research in plants or in medicine, whatever the case is. Next one. And the things that were discussed yesterday, and that many senators and also groups, associations, individuals, we have many observations and change. We're requesting changes in this proposed bill before they vote on it on Wednesday. And to do that and to raise our voices, and in order to have the voice of the industry, we had created a collective called the Legalization Movement for 2020. And under this movement, we have entrepreneurs, over 150 companies that are in this movement already. We have nonprofits, individuals, experts under just one roof, which is this collective. Next one, please. So our demands in our observations and what we ask them to change right now, and I know you guys are going to agree with me, because these are things that will slow down the economy that can be generated by this industry in Mexico. I'm sorry, this is Spanish, but I'm going to translate it. So our first demand is to decriminalize the consumption of the cannabis plant. They are putting very high monetary sanctions if you don't comply. Just if you don't have less than X amount of grams with you on the streets, you can go to jail, still go to jail, or pay tickets that are super high. And we don't want that. So that will be the first one. Decriminalize cannabis. Second one, allow the Mexican producers, cultivators to import and export marijuana, psychoactive cannabis. They are limiting the export and import of psychoactive cannabis with more than 1% THC. We are really pushing for that because, Mexico has been growing marijuana for many generations. That's where our small farmers and our growers, that's what they know what to do, how to do it, right? So it will be a great opportunity if we're able to export marijuana from Mexico. Number 3, we need them to change something super ridiculous, which is they are saying if we want to grow marijuana, it has to be in 1 hectare, no more than 1 hectare of marijuana, psychoactive cannabis, and it has to be indoor. This is crazy. They want us to have greenhouses or warehouses to grow marijuana, and in just 1 hectare. We want that to change, of course, and we're going to fight until the last minute because we have the perfect conditions to grow outdoor. And 1 hectare, what is 1 hectare going to do in terms of employment, in terms of economic resources for the community that's going to be growing, So we need to change that to be exterior, and more than 1 hectare, at least 20. That way you can give employment for at least 50, 60 people. Number four,
And
there
Lorena,
are,
Lorena, I just want to check in since we want to be able to get to our next guest in a few moments.
Sorry.
If we could
Sure.
highlight on our most critical topics, even though
Definitely.
this is so exciting.
Definitely. Yes, they're prohibiting edibles with less than 1% THC. Like
Wow.
no edibles or drinks with CBD even. So we're also fighting so we can change that because it represents a huge part of the market. And the last one is just to have very details to really identify the difference between industrial hemp and cannabis. So we can liberate industrial hemp so we don't need permits and licenses and all these things. So we can start growing industrial hemp for industrial purposes. So those are our main demands. And we'll see what happens on Wednesday.
Well, on Wednesday already. That's incredible.
Yes.
What's happening in Mexico right now.
So
The
that's
industry is so used to change, right?
Definitely, yes. It's very exciting times for Mexico. Finally, good news on this 2020 pandemic year. This is great news for Mexico. The cannabis industry is just going to bring so much for our economy and for our health.
Absolutely. So I'm going to leave us on a slide with this CannabiSalud image, your incredible show that's out of Mexico City, and check back in with Denise and the team to see if we have any time for Q&As or where we are.
We do. And Tasha has a question that she would like to ask.
Hi, Lorena. Nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you.
More or less, should I say, hey, neighbor. So I live in Arizona, and I have a question because we were watching very closely, of course, to not only our own election, but to Mexico's election as well. So for those of you out there that are not familiar, Arizona and Mexico have a very, very special trade relationship. And so my question to you is, how do you think that relationship is going to change now that that Mexico is moving towards legalization and now Arizona has voted for that?
Well, I think it's not only Arizona. I think all the states that are in the border with Mexico, right? We have California, we have as you say, Arizona. I was gonna say Texas, but I wish no Texas yet.
Yeah. And neither New Mexico either. It's just Arizona and California now.
Yeah, Arizona and California. You're right. Well, I think what's gonna happen? It's just I think the illegal market is just gonna grow because Mexico is proposing a federal law, so our whole country it's gonna be able to do everything that the law is establishing. And the United States, it's different. You guys have no federal law, it's per state. So how is that gonna look like? That's a great question. I think definitely we already have so much product from California here in Mexico. So now that you guys are gonna producing more products, recreational products, those products are gonna come to Mexico as well, just like California. In our great market of medical products, there's a black market of recreational products, and I will say probably like 80% come from California. So now we're gonna have Arizona products, but in the illegal space, unfortunately, until the United States decides to have a federal law, and that way, things are just gonna change. We have the TMEC between U.S. and Canada and Mexico. That's gonna look very interesting once you guys have a federal regulation.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's pressure now because of Canada and now you guys in Mexico for the United States.
Exactly. So you also think that if we regulate at a federal level, that means that maybe the United States will move forward?
I think so, especially with, I don't want to make political claims, but I believe
Please
so.
don't.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so.
Good.
Lorena, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it and appreciate your time and all the good work that you're doing in Mexico for the people, for the children. It's been a long road, and you're one of the powerful people down there who's really helping to move the whole industry forward. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. And please follow us through CannabiSalud and for 2020 MX, because next week we're going to have other news. And right now, it's just maybe here what you heard, it's a little complicated or confusing. But trust me, towards the end of the year, everything is going to clear out and we're going to have great news for Mexico.
Congratulations. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Bye.
Bye. And